I was recently invited to do a faculty development workshop at Briar Cliff about equipping students to overcome challenges. This presentation was not about UDL or about online teaching and learning, but the challenges we discussed serve as barriers to learning in all courses. We talked about two types of barriers, personal and social. This distinction comes from work I've been doing with Kathy Rowell, Mary Wells, and Brian Smith on teacher empathy. We argue that empathizing with students involves understanding and caring about the successes and challenges that students encounter. That means understanding and caring about a recent death in the family, as well as understanding and caring about cultural differences, prejudice, and discrimination, and how those affect students. Both personal and social challenges reduce students' bandwidth. By mental bandwidth, I mean all the cognitive or mental resources you have available to learn, to make decisions, and to solve problems. Mental bandwidth is related to executive function. I'd like to share information about a study that looked at the effects of poverty on mental bandwidth in a non-classroom setting. The researchers recruited participants from a mall. They asked them to consider the scenario described here. Your car is having trouble and you need to spend a certain amount of money to fix it. You can pay in full, take out a loan, or take a chance and forego the service. How will you decide? Some participants were asked to imagine the car repairs would cost $150, and others were asked to imagine the repairs would cost $1,500. In addition, the researchers assessed the income of the participants to determine if they were rich or poor relative to the other participants in the study. Finally, they measured fluid intelligence, which is the ability to think logically and solve problems in novel situations. Here are their findings. The relatively rich people did well on the measure of fluid intelligence, which is labeled accuracy in the figure. Whether they were asked to consider the hard situation of having to spend $1,500 or the easy $150 situation made no difference to their fluid intelligence. But the relatively poor people did worse on the measure of fluid intelligence after considering how they would respond to a $1,500 repair. These results suggest that when our students are stressed out about financial problems, they have less mental bandwidth to use to learn the material we want them to learn in our course. The solutions I discussed for helping students to reclaim their mental bandwidth largely came from Bersheldon's book, Bandwidth Recovery. She suggests ways to reduce stereotype threat, reduce belonging uncertainty, and add flexibility and second chances into course policies in the syllabus. These are also ways of communicating empathy to students. Of course, another way of communicating empathy is to listen to students. But online courses provide additional barriers to student learning and to empathizing with students. In an online course, you cannot see the confusion, anxiety, or depression on students' faces. Listening to students can be harder online than it is in a face-to-face course. Making sure each student feels heard is harder in an online course.